Call the meeting to order. And the first order of business is there any comments from anyone from the public? Okay, seeing none, move on to the chair's report, which I'm not going to contribute anything at this point, but if there's anything that anyone would like to say for the good of the organization. Alice.
The HQCCP meeting, which is the high quality, I forgot the name. It's a long name. Anyway, it's about college and career prep. Has been postponed. They've been postponed to the 28th and to the 21st, sorry, and they're going to do the financial thing on the 28th after we meet. So we won't be able to have the information before the meeting.
Okay. I think it's college and career preparation, something like that. Yeah. Yes, Sue.
I just wanted to comment, anybody who hasn't looked at the Minuteman website recently, it is orders of magnitude wonderfully improved, and I very much appreciate seeing that.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to superintendent's report. Dr. McQuillan, superintendent, goal number 1, superintendent will support the Minuteman Academy model.
Yeah. I didn't know where to put this, but there's an organizational chart draft in your
Just
packet.
after page 3.
I guess I just wanted to talk to the committee as a whole about this a little bit and answer any questions you might have. We have Kevin's retirement, and we've had discussions about the business manager position, which is posted. We also have had some discussions around the director of facilities position. But as we move forward and as I've listened to different suggestions made by different committees and such, I spent some time and reviewed this with my executive team this week around some other adjustments in the organizational chart. And I'll just I'll say before I say anything else, organizational charts tend to not give a sense of how people work together. Just because there are columns and rows, you can't run a school in columns and rows. So this doesn't have anything that, it's not meant to put people in silos or stop us from doing the things that we do together, which I believe we do well together. So in the gray area are new, or what I call restored positions. Actually, this more reflects the organizational chart that was at Minuteman in 2007 when I arrived. And, the chart has evolved at different points in time based upon the needs of the school. And as I look over the next few years, you'll see a communications director position, which I reviewed this with the enrollment task force, I believe, right? Yeah. And George's position, as we look to the future, and just imagine a time when admissions and enrollment is more of a clerical task than a constant urgent task. We really need to make sure that our academics do not slip, that we continue to have a robust and rigorous approach to how we integrate curriculum and instruction. And I believe George's, mid to long-term intention is to do that. That's where a lot of his skills and gifts are as well. So that's just an adjustment. The new position here of assistant superintendent, I've always had an assistant superintendent, and this person would be overseeing academics, career and tech ed, as well as special ed and guidance. That position hasn't been posted. When we go through the interview process, I'll request a member of the school committee be on the interview team as well, as I have around the business manager position. The director of IT, there's some new responsibilities there. The DLC group stands for the Digital Learning Curators Group, which is a group of teachers that have taken for the last couple of years, a significant role in providing professional development on integrating technology into the teaching and learning environment. And this year, as Anna Maria transitioned to another school, the DLC group has stepped up even more. And then we now have the director of the Minuteman Technical Institute running post-secondary programs. We reviewed it. There's a new position there that's not, it's anticipated in FY '21, Assistant Facilities Coordinator. When you think about the full build of the athletic fields and all the associated operational requirements there, the skill sets that are needed there, as well as our reporting requirements for the Lincoln Conservation Commission and the Lexington Conservation Commission, we really need someone who's skilled in managing these state-of-the-art $20 million athletic facilities. So we've posted, as I'll say it again, the business manager and the director of facilities. We have some very qualified applicants for each of those. I anticipate the beginning of April, we'll have a series of interviews for finalists, and I'll get a detailed timeline out. I'm trying to have an efficient grouping of meetings so that people who might be on a couple of these committees to help interview would not be coming here 3 and 4 times in a week. So that's, the Assistant Director of Career Tech Ed is in the budget for next year. Michelle Roach is retiring at the end of next school year. So I want to make sure we have someone who's being mentored by her as we move into the academy model. Michelle will be the Academy Director for the Construction Trades Academy, and the Assistant Director of CTE will function as the Academy Director for the Life Sciences and Services Academy. So any comments or initial reactions or questions?
Ed, I heard you say, I think I heard you say something to the effect that we hope that we get to admissions is more of a, pencil paper, that it'll become so automatic and we don't have to promote ourselves so much.
Well, we'll still have to promote ourselves, but I think we'll have plenty of
Like drum up
applications.
business or something, whatever. I know you didn't say that. So you see the Director of Curriculum Instruction admissions, that becoming more focused in that area, and then the Assistant Director of Admissions
Yes.
handling the admissions piece.
Yeah, I think that's the direction, the trajectory we're on. We're going to try this for a year and make adjustments as we go, seeing what works and what the needs of the school are.
And you see this happening next year?
Yes.
For next year. Alice?
Can you highlight which of these columns are the special separate budgets? I know that Minuteman Technical Institute is a separate.
The two on the right are, for the most part, outside of the district budget. There's $100,000 in the district budget that supports community ed, and a portion of the director of the Technical Institute's position. Also, the technical director's position is also funded through Perkins, part of it.
Where's routine rentals?
That'll come under the facilities director?
Facilities, so part of that feeds back into operating as well?
Yes.
50% of that position
The director of facilities
That's what you had
position,
said,
yeah.
and 20% of utilities.
Anybody else at this point? Yes, Pam.
And I think you said it, but I missed it. Has the communications director position been posted yet?
No.
Okay.
do you see us revisiting this at the next meeting or something like that, after people have had a chance to think more about it, or what?
Well, if anyone has any comments or such, just let me know. I'll keep you up to date on how it's going, and certainly as we fill some of these, I'll be introducing them to you and to various subcommittees.
Ford?
I thought it was a very good job description.
Okay.
Was the communications director job description in the packet? Okay, good.
Anyone else? Okay.
General programmatic update, the General Advisory Board, which I'll remind you is made up of the chairman of each one of the individual program advisory committees, met today. Some of them toured the building. Board brought them on a tour. I think you know this, we got the official notification that Part A of the veterinary technician application was approved. We're working on Part B, which is due the middle of April. And we're getting quite a lot of buzz about that program from a lot of families in the district. Legislation, Career Alliance for Career Tech. Monday, March 18th, there is a advocacy day, a CTE advocacy day, being sponsored by the Alliance for Vocational Technical Education, but it includes MAVA and some other workforce development agencies are going to be there as well. I just wanted to make you aware of this.
What goes on at an event like that?
Well, we have an agenda where we have a presentation, or a set of presentations, including speakers. I think Lieutenant Governor Polito is going to be one of the speakers. I'm not in charge of that part of this. We also have some parents and some kids speaking to legislators. It's an opportunity for us to go talk to our legislators. A lot of them will show up for the 45-minute presentation. We might have a video, and then we have a little light luncheon.
Tim Murray was former deputy.
Lieutenant Governor.
Lieutenant Governor.
He's one of the co-chairs of the Alliance, along with Kevin Farr and Lou Finfer, who's several of you know, the executive director of the Massachusetts Community Action Network. You might recall Lou Finfer and I began talking to each other back in 2012. He came from a place of being concerned that students were not getting access to career and technical education, specifically in the gateway cities. And over the last 6 years, the Alliance has been formed. I'm involved in the Alliance quite heavily. The Alliance meets here at Minuteman now, every other month. And they're proposing some legislation, which is included in your packet, beginning on page 5. This is sort of the, obviously the tracked changes version that has gone through several iterations. This is the legislation that the Boquillan Amendment has been attached to. It's now being called the Minuteman Amendment, thankfully. They still zero in on me, though. It doesn't have a lot of support from what I would call the bigger vocational technical schools that have waiting lists, that are more concerned about the impact of the Minuteman Amendment, which really just says, if there's room at a neighboring vocational school and there's a waiting list at a neighboring school, the students can attend and enroll in that school in a program that they're on a waiting list for in the other school. So in our particular case, it would probably add 40, 50 kids in a heartbeat.
Does that have to go through legislation, or could it be regulatory?
Well, the way this group approaches legislation is that they expect it to, they expect it to be regulatory if it's in a piece of legislation.
Also, is this final, or is it still really draft?
It's in the legislature now being worked.
Okay.
It doesn't have a number. It has a docket number right now.
But you don't have a lot of hope.
I have, Ford, I have tremendous hope about everything.
What do you think?
I do have some hope that it might be pushed through by some of our legislative team and some of the people in the legislature who hear from parents that kids are on a waiting list and not getting in.
So I think it's stronger, I think I'm on. It's strong, oh, okay. Go.
A quick question, does it have a sponsor or lead
Several,
sponsors?
yeah.
Who,
I don't remember off the top of my head.
can you think of one?
What?
Any one? I mean,
I don't know.
okay.
It has 4 or 5 right now.
I was just going to say that the guidance is stronger if it comes through the legislation than if it comes through a regulation, which can change at the
Right.
whim of the commissioner.
Did anyone have any comment about this, I'll call proposed legislation?
And just for clarification, that the Minuteman amendment's not in this.
It's not in there, no.
Anything else? All right. Anything else you want to say?
No, well, that's sort of related to 2, but I have gotten several phone calls from legislators, their staff, about our photovoltaic $1.4 million. And I've been sending them draft letters that they can write to the governor. I know there's at least 4 or 5. Today, Representative Gorelick asked for a letter that she could send to the governor to release the funds.
Do you know why haven't they, I note to myself, why haven't they been released? Do you have an idea why?
None of them have been released.
The whole, for everybody else
The
too.
legislature authorizes the bond, but the governor has to
Okay.
release the bond.
So it's not just our project?
It's all of them.
Got it, okay.
Yeah. But ours, by not getting it, we could potentially lose lead points, which could cost us $2 million.
And I think it's true that the amount authorized is several multiples of the actual dollar bond there. So, so there's competition for it.
Yep.
Anybody else on that? Or anything else there on that one? Oh, yeah, Pam?
When does the money go away? So, like, does
that's
it
a
have
good
to be
question.
spent within the fiscal year? And if the fiscal year ends, does it disappear?
Technically, I don't know. It's there as long as it's there, unless someone rescinds it. So. The non-tuition tuition policy is, I put in there my memo to the commissioner. I heard back from them that they weren't able to meet with me this week. I did hear from Cliff Chang, that all he said was that I don't think there's going to be much of a change from the letter that Mr. Wolfson wrote. I said, well, I'd still like to speak to him.
Jim, then I guess I'll turn the next part of this over to you.
Okay, sure.
The vote that
Yeah.
will be on the floor.
And we had put on the agenda, the chance to vote on that. So I'd like to sort of kick it off by making the motion and then read a statement and just leave it up to you to carry on from there, if that's all right with you. Okay, so.
Well, let's get is there a second to that? Have a motion on the floor, second?
Well, I mean, the motion is on page 11, back in the package. Let me just read it. It just says, move that the Minuteman Regional Vocational Technical School Committee, A, approve the 5-year policy for fixing non-resident tuitions as presented. B, authorize the officers and superintendent to send a letter on behalf of the full school committee to DESE Commissioner Jeffrey C. Riley requesting his approval of this policy. And C, recognize that if the commissioner approves this policy, that the school committee will defer the fixing of fiscal year 21 non-resident tuition rates until the December 2019 meeting and will seek public comment from all interested parties before its December 2019 meeting. and that the approved policy will set a ceiling for the actual tuition rates to be fixed.
Sue? Okay. All right. Jim, you say you have a statement you'd like to
Sure.
read, and then we'll have a full discussion
Okay,
of the
great.
motion and
Yep.
the content of the motion.
And just as the motion says, this proposes no change for fiscal year 20. That is asking the commissioner to sort of bless a 5-year plan that would actually allow us to start raising non-resident tuitions for the type A towns starting in fiscal year 21. And then my statement is that I ask that we vote on this motion that we vote on this motion tonight, even though Ed was not able to discuss this with the commissioner this past week. First, the big picture. This motion is presented to implement existing policy as set forth in our regional agreement that was passed by 16 town meetings and approved by the commissioner in 2016. This is not new policy. You may not like this policy, but it is what it is. The issue we should be focused on is how can we implement it. I've spent more than 9 months working on this and talking with you. I've come up with a variety of approaches, and we have changed my proposals and recommendations in response to your comments. We had Kevin reach out to DESE for an initial reaction, and we received pretty specific instructions about how to proceed. This motion in front of you respects DESE's comments from last fall, as well as my own response to your concerns about moving slowly so that we don't unwittingly jeopardize our relationships with type A non-member towns. I don't think we can come up with a better motion or a proposal, and I don't think that you should need any more information or time to decide whether or not you support this. We should decide this tonight. That if we do vote favorably on this tonight, you will have a new talking point for your town meeting this spring when you answer questions about why your town's assessment has gone up so much this a year. You will be able to say that you have started the process by which that the 7 towns that voted to leave, plus Watertown, will within a few years pay the same on average as member towns. That the next step would be to send a letter based on the draft that was included in your January package. I drafted this letter to specifically address the issues that Deputy Commissioner Wolfen raised with Kevin. I think it's a good, strong letter. I think it's fair for you to ask why do I care? I care because I think the best long-term plan for Minuteman is to have a 17-member district, which includes the 6 declarant towns, Belmont and Watertown. As members, these 17 towns would provide the strongest financial and political base for the district. None of these towns have their own Chapter 74 programming, and they are the natural constituency for our district. Take a look at the application numbers on page 16 in your March packet. The 9 remaining member towns have 168 applications, and the other 8 towns have 52. Taken together, these 17 towns account for 220 applications. If we get a 75% yield, that's 165 incoming freshmen next fall. Times 4, that's a potential school size of 660 students, full capacity. Note that each of the 6 declarant towns has at least one applicant as of February 28th, and Watertown and Belmont have 20 and 19 applications respectively. The 8th graders and their families in these towns clearly want Minuteman to be there for them, as they recognize they have no other viable option. In my draft letter to Commissioner Riley, I make a case based on this reality. On page 21 of the January packet, I wrote, "The current regulations impose an unfunded mandate on the 9 member towns to subsidize the 8 other type A towns that regularly send students to Minuteman. This is not good from either a financial or political perspective. It is not fair to the member towns, and it deprives the district of critical financial resources. Moreover, it puts the true educational advocates for vocational education inside the non-member towns at a disadvantage because the educational arguments in favor of securing long-term access to a Minuteman must overcome the temptation of the short-term free lunch created by the current tuition cap. We know there is genuine interest among the residents of Type A towns to consider or reconsider membership in the Minuteman district. In the two towns that would be most affected by our proposed policy, Watertown and Belmont, it will take time and effort to make district membership a viable political option, but we are ready to have the new conversations and to allay old grievances in pursuit of this goal. However, the existing financial advantage of non-membership hinders these discussions. Our proposal for a transition to average cost tuitions is our best idea for breaking this impasse. We ask that you support our objective and approve our proposal. And that's in the draft letter. So if your long-term goal here is to rebuild membership in the district, and I hope you will agree that this proposal is the next step to take on the multi-year journey to make that happen. My own opinion is that it's the right thing, that is the right thing to do, and that is an achievable goal. I recognize and respect that some of you may not share the same goal of rebuilding the district, that you may think that the 9-member town configuration is best, and that whatever spare capacity there will be in the new building can be filled by non-members at the reduced tuition rates. That if you really prefer to keep the district as is at the 9 remaining members, then this tuition proposal is of less importance to you. I don't buy it either from the perspective of one of the towns that's voted to leave, or from the perspective as the current vice chair of this committee, looking at the long-term financial challenges that the district faces. I strongly recommend that you vote to endorse this policy and make the best case possible to the commissioner, and recognize that it is the best step we can take now towards expanding district membership. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have a question or comment? Pam?
I have 2 questions. I'm just curious, in reading the way the motion is written, it says that the school committee will, fixing the 2001 non-resident tuition rates. The way the policy is written, so if the school committee decided that for whatever reason these weights didn't make sense once we were like a year or 2 down the road, is your reading of the way this is written that we would have the flexibility to change these weightings here?
We would have that the proposal really serves as a cap, so you would have the flexibility to charge lower tuition rates than that formula would show. Yes.
Did you have another question?
I do, but if yours is a follow-up to that.
Alice?
So how is it an advantage to Minuteman to set a 5-year cap on what we can charge?
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Well, I mean that the comment is that talking with the local leaders in those 8 towns that are using a Minuteman and that are benefiting by it, they would see that the advantage of staying as a non-member would not be nearly as strong. And so I think it would at least create some momentum within the non-member towns to come back and to talk about a new regional agreement that would expand the district.
I'm still not sure that answered my question. Why would we cap our ability to charge money? Why would we put a cap on us? A 5-year commitment to cap it? I can see why they would like that. I don't see
No,
why it's
look, I mean, where I started last summer is that I wanted us to charge the full cost this year. I mean, I'm trying to find something that the full committee could talk. If you want to amend it and support raising the cap, that's fine with me, but I'm looking for something that works for us all.
Jeff?
Let's say that we vote for this, and we send out a tuition bill to a town that's higher than the commissioner's current cap. Okay, so that town is going to go to the commissioner, right, and say, this number is higher than the cap, and the commissioner is going to say, yes, you're right, they can't charge you that. Because the commissioner has a cap on our tuition. So what do we do then?
I mean, this is all to start the process to sort of make sure that scenario doesn't take place. First of all, it is to get the commissioner to focus and, under the guidance of the board, to focus on it this spring and summer. And so then, as the motion says, we would then go into the budget setting season, and we would have conversations with all the towns that were, in the same way that we do now, that Kevin talks to the town and administrators and says that, this is what the tuition is going to look like. We are going to be doing it next year for the capital fee. So whatever we learn in terms of fiscal year 20 about charging the capital fee is going to fit into what we would do in following years.
But the capital fee has been approved, so they have to pay that. But if I was a town getting this bill, then I'd say, doesn't mean anything because the commissioner has a cap and that's all I have to worry about. And that would be the end of the issue from my point of view.
This is asking the commissioner to recognize that the cap that he sets only applies to the type B towns, and that Minuteman is following what is already allowed under state law to set tuitions with the commissioner and approval for type A towns.
So my concern would be that the commissioner believes, rightfully or wrongly, that his cap applies to everybody. And we disagree with that. And let's say that you're 100% right about that. Then what's the remedy? Because the commissioner is saying one thing, we say something else.
I would not recommend that the school committee try to do something that the commissioner said that we couldn't do. So if that were the case, if the commissioner said that you can't do it, then that's it.
So really the question is, and then I'll let somebody else go. The real question is, though, that we have a disagreement with you. We think that your cap should only apply to type B towns. We think the regulation says that we can charge a higher tuition for the type A towns.
Right.
And we had a letter to him about this previously, right? Did we ask the question that directly? We did not.
No.
So wouldn't it be then wise, well, I don't know about wise, because, it's very tempting to go ahead with this because it is unfair that they're not paying the same price. And you're absolutely right that the reason that they don't want to come on board, one of the reasons they don't want to come on board is they think that they're to some extent getting a free lunch, which doesn't make any sense. Right. So perhaps there's another way to get the commissioner to focus on this issue with that one question, very targeted question. Isn't, to cite the regulations to say, doesn't this mean that for type A towns, we should be able to charge more? It says so in your regulations, at least that's our argument.
Yeah. I mean, Jeff, that's exactly what I think this motion is doing.
Pam?
So the motion is basically saying that we will approach the commissioner, we will get his reading on this, and all of this will only go into effect if he approves. Now, I guess I wanna, so there is and I have to admit, I've said this every time we've talked about it, I'm very mixed on this, because on the one hand, I know that my town feels it is unfair that they pay more than non-member towns. On the other hand, I'm really concerned about what this will do in terms of enrollment. But if we basically, I guess I just want kind of a thought, if we pass this without the proposed tuition policy, which, without the detail of this is how we would do it, without the cap. So we're basically saying we'll approach the commissioner, and if he approves the policy, then the school committee will set rates. And then, leaving us the flexibility to figure out what would the best rate be. I guess I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think there has been a lot of conversation back and forth with everyone here, and I think the sense, I even sat down with the chair of the Watertown Schoolum Committee in January, and sort of talking with people in Belmont. If you ask the type A towns, they don't want this. They would rather sort of keep things the way that they were. And in fairness to them, that you need to give them, I think you need this specificity of the actual table and say, this is exactly what we're talking about. We aren't talking about any more than this. And it's going to be a gradual thing. It's going to be on the same order of magnitude as the capital fee. Right now, the gap on a per student basis is a little bit under $11,000, and so if you broke that into thirds, you would be raising tuitions by $3,000 per student every year. We're already going out there next year and putting a $6,200 capital charge on them, so they're going to get used to Minuteman coming up with higher bills. And so this is just sort of to continue that for 3 more years to bring us up to the level that our regional agreement says that they should be paying.
Jeff? Carrie? I didn't see your hand, sorry.
Thank you. It had been up earlier. Ed has had informal discussion, more along the lines of asking for the chance to talk about this by memo and in person. And I think what I heard you say is, but don't expect to hear anything different than we heard from Jeff Wolfson, which was, she probably not better have a really good.
Yeah, that wasn't
Okay.
from the commissioner, it was from someone in his office.
Okay, all right. So I would be interested in hearing what you think about how this would be received without having had that preliminary discussion with the commissioner. I'm wondering if there is, are we better served by waiting even if it takes another 2 months, politically or strategically? Or are we better served by just plowing through and saying, damn it, this is what we want, this is what we think is right for Minuteman and equitable for the communities that we're serving, A's and B's and our members?
Well, my opinion is, as I look at the motion, so I think might be helpful if I give you, there wasn't any more updates to this, right? It's the one that's in.
It's the one that's here. Yep.
There's a motion that's been moved that has 3 parts to it. And I do not support Part A, and Part C is irrelevant unless Part B is approved by the commissioner. If the school committee wants to, what Jim says in regards to its political leverage or its political weight that it would have in some towns and other towns. I think that's, has some merit to it. That being able to say the school committee is looking at this has some merit to it and might move towns like Watertown. So if I was going to make a recommendation to the school committee that doesn't bind you to anything, but yet gives some weight to the actions of the committee, it would be to look at B as the motion, to simply send a letter on behalf of the school committee to Riley requesting his approval of this. And then if he approves it, then you can have a secondary debate about some of the more detailed things. But I have said in the past, and Jim and I have had great debates about this, I am not in favor of increasing tuitions at this time in this manner when we are already precariously, the legislation that's in this packet that's being proposed has to do with some of these very issues, and this could exacerbate them at a point where we may have a legislative solution. And the fact that there's when you talk about political, I mean, I'm just doing a political dump on you right now. The Minuteman amendment, it just would bring, I think I've said what I want to say. I think B is the appropriate action that you should be talking about. And I think when you get a formal letter, either saying, yes, I would approve it, or no, I wouldn't, then you know where you're going to be.
Jim?
Okay, 2 points. One, that the Minuteman amendment really is focused on type B towns, and this is really focused on type 1. So there is some separation there, that we're talking about different regulations. And I don't want to get into the access issue because I want to stay focused on this, but just recognize there is a clean separation between the two. If you're more comfortable, if you're not comfortable with the motion as presented because of the schedule that Pam talked about, but if you're willing to sort of send a letter that looks like the January letter, and if something like this were used as an example of something we're considering rather than the actual voted policy, if you think that would work, that's a lot better than voting down the whole thing.
Yes, Jeff?
Just a tiny bit of history. My recollection is that the tuition level was set at 150% of foundation, and he chopped it down to 125% a number of years ago. That's why our situation in this is so dire. So there is a level of unfairness here for the reason that everybody should be paying the same amount, and it's exacerbated by that cut. And we can certainly remind the commissioner of that recent cut and the impact it had on us as part of the letter that you're sending. Right. So I have no objection to say, although we're not anywhere near voting at it yet, this is the kind of thing we were thinking of as a policy. In our letter, we could certainly refer to that if you wanted to. But the big thing is to say, because there's a roadblock set up, if the commissioner says no, that your idea that it does not cover type A towns is completely wrong, then we're dead in the water unless we're going to go a lawsuit, which we're not going to do. So I think that the right thing to do is to do B, perhaps to remind the commissioner of what happened to us not long ago and the great burden that placed on us. And if you wanted to, and that would be a strategic decision, say this is just something we've been kicking around, we're nowhere near voting on it, but just to give you an idea of how it might work, to send, a policy or variation on the policy along with it. I have no objection to that.
And I think such a letter could really stress how important this issue is to our member communities, how frequently it comes up, the inequities in what we're paying versus what they're paying, notwithstanding the capital fee that has been added. So I think I'm very much on the same page that you are, Jeff.
Alice?
I don't remember what the January letter looked like, but Minuteman had a very antagonistic relationship with lots of communities and the Department of Education for a long time. And we've we've actually gotten kind of away from that, and we're in a better place now. We have an MSBA project, we have a lot of goodwill because of the state-of-the-art program that we're building, and Minuteman is gotten out of being this kind of antagonistic, all caps letters kind of institution that we were for a while. And I worry that we're going to go back into that mode. The way that we got the 150% of the statewide average, whatever they call it, vocational tuition, was not antagonistic. It was actually logical. We approached them with a logical error they had made, and they recognized that it was an error and fixed it. And I think that the approach that we should take is more diplomatic and less antagonistic. And I recognize that there are some communities that are taking advantage, but I also note that there are a lot of these communities that have 1 or 2, less than 5 students applying here. They're not going to become members because of this tuition policy with that number of kids. There might be 2 communities where they would consider membership, but these other numbers are not going to be sufficient for them to want to take on the building project. So you'll just get their attention in a negative way and put us back into that box of, here's this school we don't want to be associated with. And I think we have that opportunity with this new building that hasn't even opened yet. We don't even know what the filling of it is going to be. I don't want to get involved in an antagonistic relationship with the department, and especially with the legislation that's proposed. The Minuteman Amendment is it's a good idea, and it's the right time for that idea. They want access to vocational programs, and there's a logical reason why they should approve the Minuteman Amendment, because it makes sense and it goes along with what they're trying to do. So I really am worried about the politics of this.
Yeah.
And then Jim, and then back to Carrie.
Yeah, I agree with Alice and not wanting to get into fights again. But, which I think would set the stage if you approve the policy, then ask for permission, and then when he doesn't give it, you're saying the commissioner didn't approve the policy we approved, and that's just sets up that antagonism. Whereas if you look at just B, the other thing about looking just at B is that Minuteman is not the only school experiencing the revenue shortfalls because of the ninth grade exploratory regulation and not adopting the Minuteman Amendment. And if we passed B, I could share that with MAVA, with the Mass Association of Vocational Administrators and the other directors and superintendents. And they could see that as probably, there might be 1 or 2 schools that would pick up on that. So yeah, I could have Jim doing seminars at MAVA, about this.
Glad to.
Unpaid, of course,
Yeah,
but.
of course. As always.
But I know there are, I know there are at least
No.
3 other vocational schools that would be interested in this approach to trying to offset the regulatory, punishment that's been dealt out. And that might generate some attention on the department to look at the Minuteman Amendment, because the Minuteman Amendment would not help just Minuteman. It would help at least 3 or 4 other schools, and it would help at least 7 to 8 on a much smaller scale than ours. So I think the strategy of looking at B and doing it sort of gently and respectfully and sharing what we've done makes a lot of sense at this point in time, because it doesn't put us in an antagonistic role. It doesn't make us assume that we're going to do it, and we could still talk to our member towns about this is what we're looking at.
I'd like to just ask Jim a question. How do you feel about proposing an amendment to the motion, which would be essentially B?
Yeah.
Or as opposed to voting for the building? Where are you coming from?
I'm coming, maybe we should refer this back to two of the officers to come back to the next meeting with a draft of an actual letter. Because I think we'd be asking the school committee to, I mean, if the school committee, trusts us to send a letter on their behalf, that's fine, but I didn't know whether they would want to see the letter first. And so I'm fine with either amending this to direct us to send a letter now.
Well, they would come back, I would bring it back to the school.
Okay, well then that's.
After someone's looked at it.
Yeah.
This is too limited.
Yeah, no, that's clearly where, that's clearly where the juice in the room is, so I'm fine with that.
I don't think it's a
But I wanted to respond to both Alice and Ed on a couple points. One, I recognize that the January letter was not sent out in the package, but if you go back and read it, you will find that at least in its tone to the commissioner, it is very respectful. It is not at all antagonistic, and moreover, it is asking the commissioner to apply existing state law. This is not asking for anything new, but it's asking for circumstances have changed. When you wrote the regulations, most of the non-member students here were from Type B towns. We had very few Type A towns. But what's happened since the time that the regulation went into effect, we've had seven member towns vote to leave. We've had the access. So the whole composition of Type A, Type B towns has changed, and the state law allows a regional school district to actually set the tuition to be approved by the commissioner. So it's not state law. It is not new state law. It's using the current state law. I also think that Minuteman is probably unique in the circumstances. When I took a look at the budgets of the regional school committees that also have a fairly large non-member tuition, a large non-member enrollment, if you apply the same method of calculating the average cost, their average costs actually come in below what the DESI rate is. And so they're actually making money on the non-member students. It's only us that, because of our smaller class size and our geographic location, that the gap between average costs and the statewide tuition cap is so large.
This is really following on what Alice was talking about. It seems to me that Watertown and Belmont have a vested interest just by the number of students that have attended here historically in reversing or making a decision to become a member as it becomes more attractive to our existing member communities are taking up more and more of the space. I can see an argument in Lincoln, even though it's still only 4 students. That's 2 more, I think, than it was last year. I could be mistaken. But for them, it's having the opportunity for a voice on the governing body of the school, which is operating in their community. The others, I think, Alice, you're right, that there isn't a lot of incentive for them one way or another, and the difference in the tuition for 1 or 2 students a year is not a huge piece of their budget. And so I'm strongly leaning towards modifying the motion so it focuses on option B, step B.
Okay, Carrie, looking at the wording of option or not B, or part B as it stands, if that was offered as an amendment, what would the word, would you change the wording in any way?
Authorize the officers and the superintendent. I would requesting his review of this policy, I suppose.
And rather calling it this policy, call it a non-resident tuition policy.
I had not actually thought about it. The other thing I wanted to say is putting it off to the April meeting. I won't be here because it's town meeting night in Concord. So I don't know if there's other people who have that same situation in April, but for me, I won't be here. Tonight, we happen to have everybody here for the first time in the last 3 meetings, I think.
I decide I didn't hear it.
I would recommend that the word send be changed to draft.
I wrote that down.
Yeah. Yep.
Draft a
Yep.
letter on behalf of the full school committee requesting, and just if you would, give me the wording of the requesting.
Requesting
Are we
his
requesting his approval, or are we
Of-
requesting his feedback, review of the policy?
review of a
And-
non-resident tuition policy
Review and
and
reaction to, or response to, or something?
their comments. His comments on,
And we got more than that. But,
yeah.
Ford, we haven't heard from Mr. Mel.
No, Jeff's next.
So I don't think we need a motion at all, because we're not sending anything out yet. I mean, they know the superintendent is in agreement with the officers, an agreement to move forward to create a draft to do this. So you don't have to worry too much about the wording. We don't need the motion at all this time, but here's the important thing. The important thing to me
Motion
is,
on the table.
yeah, I understand, but I'm saying that it's, yeah. So the important thing is that really, we have a number of possible avenues which can give us relief from certain enrollment issues that we have. And one of the themes that was brought up is that in order to have any of these things be likely to come to fruition, it's important to have a good relationship with the powers that be. So the idea brought up by the superintendent and others is to pursue this as one of the possibilities. We don't know which of these is going to come to fruition. We don't know if it's going to be the Minuteman amendment, or people will love us because we have a new school, or our outreach effort. We don't know what the impact of any of these are going to be. So it's good to have the flexibility of having them, all out there, as long as one does not jeopardize the other. So the purpose of this outreach, and as the superintendent mentioned, it could dovetail with the other efforts, right? So you said, mention it dovetailing with the Minuteman amendment. You brought up arguments just a few seconds ago, which is why it should be reconsidered, the tuition level should be reconsidered, even if this is not the way that the commissioner goes, because the other things they can do to improve the tuition picture from our point of view, we're just suggesting one of them. So I think it's very important to pursue this option. I think going ahead with drafting a letter and bringing it to the school committee at next meeting is the way to go. A respectful letter that dovetails with our other efforts, and I think it's very important as part of that letter to have the discussion exactly as you said, as why the situation has changed and how harmful the current low level of tuition is for us. And there's a reason that the tuition for us should be higher. I think that should all be part of it. I think I'm very happy with moving forward with that. If you want me to vote on the motion on the table, that's fine. I don't think we need it, but I'll be happy to vote for it.
I think the benefit of having a motion, even if it's as watered down as that, is that whoever writes the letter is able to say that the committee, the school committee, has, requested by its action, by its vote, that we send this letter.
We're going to vote on the letter next meeting.
I know. But in the meantime, he may be having informal conversations. And to be able to say that his school committee is moving in this direction may be helpful without being overbearing and pushing. I think it's helpful to have a motion on the record and a vote.
We've got a motion on the floor.
Yep.
Let's vote on each section separately. We won't have to, rather than doing amendment. We'll vote on A separately, B separately, C separately.
Okay.
Ford.
A letter is great. I think we should send a letter, and I think it, can be drafted by Ed and Jim and whoever. I think it's very important that we stress in the letter, and this doesn't have to be a part of a motion, but we stress in the letter that you want a meeting. and you want a meeting with the commissioner. Because writing a letter is fine, but sometimes they get just put aside. I think you need to be strong on that you want a meeting, and you need to make sure one is set up. And, I think that's how you build relationships. Writing letters doesn't build relationships. Sitting in front of people builds relationships, and I think that's what you need to do. So, in the letter, I strongly urge you request a meeting and you pursue the meeting.
And a meeting with the superintendent and the chair and the vice chair and join the secretary if we.
Oh, I think that's exactly right, Jim. I mean, I would, it's up to you guys, but I would defer and say, I think the superintendent, and I think you. And I think you guys got to go in with the same story, and you will, but I think you both need to be there. And it may be more than one meeting, but I think you need to pursue that meeting. That's more important, actually, than the letter.
Okay. Any other?
Dave, you have revised language for B, right?
Almost.
Almost. I think that the quickest way to do this is to move to amend the motion to eliminate parts A and C and replace B with the revised language that you have.
Second.
Okay, I need to revise, and so does Julie, we need to revise language.
Okay, it's to authorize the officers and superintendent to draft a letter on behalf of the full school committee to DESI Commissioner Jeffrey C. Riley, requesting his review and comment on, is it a
On
draft
a-
policy?
On a
On a
non-resident.
non-resident
tuition
policy.
Non-resident tuition policy.
Okay?
Is that all you want, though? Review and comment?
I think
Yeah.
at this point, yes.
Yeah, because
Yes.
it's a letter and then we do what Ford says.
Yeah, you don't need to say, you don't have to have an emotion, but I think pursue that meeting.
And you don't have to spell out all the stuff you know he might, react to negatively
Right.
off the
Why
bat,
don't
you know?
Non-resident tuition policy, that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so you.
That's my motion.
That's the amendment to the motion.
That's
I make a motion, you can.
Okay, do we have a second to that? We have a second?
Second.
Well, it's his, he amended it, he seconded it.
Okay.
All right, any discussion? So we're voting on the amendment, and it would be to
Eliminate A and C.
eliminate A and C, and to vote on authorize the officers and the superintendent to draft a letter on behalf of the full school committee to Department of Education, Secretary of Education, Commissioner Jeffrey C. Riley, requesting his review and comment on the non-resident tuition policy. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? All opposed? It's really.
So it's amended.
So now it's amended, so we vote on the motion as amended. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, 10-0-0.
Thank you. Thank you, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Great.
Now we're on.
The enrollment
Goal
task
3,
force.
yeah. Let's see. Well, you're going to give us an update on goal 3 yet, or?
No.
Okay, enrollment task force, at page 18, up to 18 and 20 begins on that.
Yeah, I just had a brief update to some of that data. We've sent out 191 acceptance letters to member towns.
Wow.
Okay, that was.
And there's a now
That was goal
20
3.
So that's up
22.
from 150 a week ago?
Yep.
How many acceptance letters?
100, I think we had 191 or 2 acceptance letters to member town
Goal
applicants.
number 3.
Yeah, so-
Okay.
So 4 more.
Okay, Pam?
Well, I actually have a question on that. So, once you send the acceptance letters, at that point, do most of them then end up coming? Or, I know we've talked about this 65% return. Is that 65% of those who have received acceptance letters? Or is it
Over the
higher
next
than
few
that?
weeks, they'll be making a commitment. So we
So-
asked them to return some other information that indicates they're coming.
So it's probably not 100%, but
It's never been 100% in the history of the world.
Right.
We're expecting a pretty healthy freshman class, so.
Good. All right, now you ready to go, Pam?
So the enrollment task force at its last meeting reviewed a chart that Jeff had put together in looking at both all of the different activities that we have talked about, as well as who are, who the people are we have, what they're responsible for, and what are the activities that aren't getting done. And it was out of that information that Jeff and others worked with the superintendent to, to basically, or the superintendent drafted the job description for the director of communications that the task force reviewed and, felt pretty strongly that this would be a very positive move and really help us be able to address some of the activities that we haven't been able to get to. Things like, more visibility in towns, improving our presence on, social media, with the website, to be building an alumni network, to be, helping to work with our supportive businesses, to be better promoting Minuteman, and basically to be ensuring that we do have, a constant visible presence in our town. So I think that job description is in the packet. So, I think that that was the major step that came out of our last meeting. We're going to be meeting again in about, I think, 2 weeks. I can, I'll just share that date. I can share that date in a moment with folks. But I don't know, anyone else from the task force have anything to add?
So during our discussions, we were very unclear as to which people should have which positions. What the superintendent did as a suggestion is they created this new post of the communications director. And you can see the importance of this post if you look at the organizational chart to see where this person fits in the chart. And these responsibilities cover almost all the things that we've been discussing over the last half year that cannot be done effectively with the staff we have because they don't even have the time to do it. So I, for one, am very, very happy with this position, description on paper, and the challenge is going to be finding the right person to do this. And this has to be not a gopher, but a person with a lot of initiative and, high-level skills and whatnot. So I hope that this position is posted as soon as possible, that we're involved with hiring this position, and that the gods smile and bless us, and we're able to find the right person to do this very challenging. If you look at the job description, it's very challenging. But it would really, I think, pull together all the things that we've been talking about for months and months and months. So I'm very happy with the superintendent's approach to this. I think the whole enrollment committee is happy with that approach. And I just want to, get going on this ASAP.
Did you, and I'll come to you in a minute, so do you, or Ed or whoever, or Pam, the memorandum of understanding on student access to information, do you
Yes,
see?
thank you.
Do you see this director, the communications director handling that? I was trying to see how they integrated when I was reading it.
I think that this is something that would be handled by the admissions staff. I'm not sure that the communications director would need to be the person who would be Thank you for raising well, actually, before we get to this, should we just see if there's any
Oh,
other
you were going to get to it? Okay, all
Any
right.
other comments
All
on
right,
the?
that was really my question, and I'll come back to it, but that was I'll come back to that.
Right, but if there's any other comments on the communication director position.
Okay,
There's a lot in there, so,
Yeah.
need to be a very special person to be
Yeah.
handling. There's media, there's outreach, there's, lots of different pieces in that position.
Yeah,
yes, Terry.
following on Jeff's comments, I think, assuming we can find the right person, the sooner the better, because I think we have really, Steve leaving at the end of last year has left a big gap, which it's unreasonable to expect other people to backfill. But there's a different focus now. We got the new building, it's going up. Now, what do we do with it? How do we promote ourselves and our, I won't go further with that.
get it.
Just to say, I think it is important that it be filled.
Okay.
And some of the other pieces of the org chart that you've looked at, that you've shown us, don't work as well. They may work, but they won't work as well without that person
Oh, absolutely.
there to tie all those pieces together in our outward-looking persona.
Okay. Sue?
I'm a little concerned with the description itself. I don't want to get too far down in the weeds here, but having 16 major responsibilities is probably not going to be very helpful in terms of getting someone to focus on what we're really looking for. And it seems to me, as a suggestion, that the first responsibility, design and implement a comprehensive communications program, covers an awful lot of what's in here. I don't think it's possible to find somebody who can design the website, and draft op-ed. And like I said, 16 is just too many. And I think it would make more sense to get somebody who can sift through these kinds of ideas and decide with the superintendent and the executive team what the most important things are to help us raise our image and enhance enrollment, because that's really where we want to go with this, right?
Anybody else? Okay, you're going to continue?
So the next enrollment task force is meeting March 27th. Moving to, in your packet, page 20, the memorandum of understanding on student access to information. This is something that we've discussed for the last several meetings.
Right.
It was designed to be a document that listed the minimum requirements of what we wanted from our member towns and giving us access, to students to be able to present information from Minuteman, and wanted to be very explicit about what those minimum requirements were. Since this draft was sent out, I know Alice has had some edits that I don't think are incorporated into what's in here. Is that right, Julia?
They're not in our
here.
copy.
Yep, they're not in our
I
copy.
brought Alice's copy, I downloaded
So
it.
and I know a vote on this isn't on the agenda. I think what we did want to have the school committee take a formal vote on this. So what I'm hoping that we can do is incorporate the edits. If anyone has any other changes, to get them to Julia as soon as possible so that we can be sure to vote on this on the April meeting.
Okay. Alice, when I downloaded what you sent out, some ink was black and some was in red. Those both were yours?
Mine I changed because mine ran out of ink.
Okay, I just wanted
They were pretty minor edits.
There's technical edits.
I know, they were-
Technical edits, but
Right,
those were
right.
vocational
I understand.
skills. And if the school committee is going to
Yeah,
sign this,
right.
you don't want to have technical errors.
I think I saw one that I think maybe you missed, that alumni, spelling of alumni. Was that a,
Probably along this thing,
yeah, I'll go back to that.
It's certainly within the purview of the committee to vote on this tonight, if, with technical corrections. doesn't necessarily have to be on the agenda.
Okay.
Yes, Sue, and then Jeff, and then I had something I would add too.
Much like Ford's concern about what the action step would be associated with this, I'm not sure I understand, like, who would actually, where does this go, and who's responsible
Yeah.
for making things happen, and what's the accountability?
You want me to?
Yes.
You're all looking at me. This would be something we would, my suggestion is that once this is voted on and corrected with the technical amendments, that a letter go from the school committee chair and the superintendent to our local school committees, our partner school committees, copied to the superintendent, and ask them to react to it and become a part of it. The idea that we can dictate what our partner towns do in regards to giving us access is folly. The only thing within the regulations that they're required to do is give us contact information. That's it. If you read the proposed legislation, it expands that a little bit. So this is in alignment with some of those access issues. So this is giving us access to provide information to 7th and 8th grade families. And really, there's very little in here that we haven't been doing. And the majority of our, with the exception of the very last paragraph, which talks about professional development for guidance counselors, which I've had conversations with 2 of our superintendents about, one today, and they're all, great idea, let's do it. So it's an MOU between the school committees, along with the superintendent.
Oh, I know the alumni.
That's how I think it has more, and some may sign it, some may not, but
Jeff,
it doesn't prevent us from doing it.
For 20 years now, every single year, I've heard concerns from the admissions group at this school that different communities treat us wildly differently in terms of access to their students. The idea behind this is to say, okay, let's create what the best practices are. Now, we can't impose this on anybody.
Right.
But if we have in writing what we believe are the best practices, which they've been reluctant to put in writing in the past, and say, because, they had to think about it, said, really, what are the best practices, and not be afraid to ask. You don't know. They can't say yes or no until you ask. So you create a document that says, uniformly now, no more we have, a separate discussion of what we should do with each town. This is what we think are best practices. Now, a lot of the communities will say no to some of this stuff, but we still have the documents saying what are the best practices, and we can point to towns, hopefully, that will implement all of them. And so eventually the other towns will feel, well, maybe these are legitimate over time. Now, we've gone through many drafts of this, and the last draft has been approved, my understanding is, by the superintendent and the admissions group, and it takes out all the language that had some, kind of harsh conversation in it. So I think it's a good thing to go to, and exactly what the superintendent said. They're gonna be, every town you're gonna treat differently. Some towns will want to talk to you, others won't. Some you may talk to the selectmen. Who knows what's going to happen? You just got to start somewhere very nicely, and over time, hopefully this will become the standard for all the towns. And that's the idea
And
behind it.
Arlington's been great
I just want to add something, then I'll call it on YouTube.
about all this.
When I looked through the communications director job description, and it came up again when I read the memorandum. I like the memorandum. I like it a lot. But I think, and what Ford, you said about when we write to the commissioner, we ask for a meeting with the commissioner. I think it needs that piece. I kept asking myself, well, who is going to go? How do we personalize the relationship between Minuteman and schools? who is going to go out to the schools and promote Minuteman and be a liaison to them. And I think we still perhaps need to talk a little bit more about that. But also what I would add to and I'll put it in writing later and send it to Julie. I would end it with, on the memorandum, I would end it with something like, either Ed and I or whatever would be really happy to, would be glad to, or the admissions director would be very happy to talk to you about these particular concepts, whatever you want to call them. But that's not here. Doesn't mean we look forward to working with you. But I would say, you want to talk to us, we'd love to come and talk to you.
We
Or
could put that in
offer-
the cover letter.
Or offer right in the cover letter. We would like to meet with you about these. But I think, just wait your turn now. I don't say an awful lot, so just wait your turn.
What?
Is that we need that, we need to
I can't
make
be here
that.
next month, I have to talk a lot tonight.
That overture, that we'd like to interact with you, and we're available to you, and we have people who would be available for you. And I think that we need that in the, okay, now it's rest of you guys. Alice, and then Jeff.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding on student access to information, providing that the grammatical errors are corrected, and that it go with a cover letter.
All right. Second?
Second.
Sue, did you ever hand up earlier?
Did you want to go first? I would love it. For the cover letter, I think the sense of the cover letter is that these best practices, the reason we're doing this is for the interest of the student and their parents, so that they have the best information. The homeschool committee is responsible for the educational welfare of that kid all the way through, and we are part of that system, and we are here at Minuteman to do what's right and best for the children, for the
Okay.
kids, and not the preachy thou shalt or thou must or we know better.
Jeff and then Sue?
Although we do.
Did have a discussion on this very issue, and
Which one's that?
the issue of how do we communicate this in the appropriate manner
Yeah.
to and the part of the answer is that the towns are not uniform in who will want to talk to us. In some towns, it may be the superintendent, and others it may be the school committee, and others it may be another group. So you got to start at some point, and eventually you're going to figure out who the right person to talk to is. But you create the document, you send a nice cover letter, you start with the school committee, from the superintendent and the chair of the Minuteman School Committee, and then you're going to feel your way. It's going to be different in all the different towns.
I understand that. I just think it's important that we say we would be happy, or whoever would be happy to meet with you, and that we maintain a personal relationship with schools as much as we can.
It might be a good idea in the communities where we have the middle school programs to mention that in the letter for those communities, that, we're really excited about how we partner with you on that already.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, Sue?
I think this would be effective if it goes to a specific person. I think sending it to the school committee in general, certainly in Arlington, it just
To
will...
the chair.
To the chair.
To the chair.
Yeah.
To the superintendent and the chair with copies to the rest of the committee, is where we came down.
Oh, what, the memorandum does?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to the
The
principal?
letter? No, the superintendent.
Oh, superintendent, oh, yeah, sorry.
And the-
Principal.
Superintendent and
Yeah, not to, no.
chair of school
But
committee?
it's superintendent and chair of school committee.
I'm sorry? But I thought that
Chair.
was, yeah, but I thought that was us signing it.
Yeah, you and I will send
Right.
it to the
But I'm-
corresponding chair.
Corresponding people,
That's
okay.
right.
Okay, but here's one issue. The chair changes every single year,
In most towns.
and certainly in our town, I imagine most of them. So even if people, the chair of the school committee cannot dictate that emails go out, for example, to all parents in the district. That's not their decision. And I'm a little concerned that this is, what I would prefer, just my preference, would be to have 3 things we would like done, boom, 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 boom. We'd like to meet with you to figure out, can we do this, and who's the right person for us to deal with. Because I really worry that trying to set up relationships that are going to change every year with at least 9 different towns around a memorandum this long, it's going to take a lot of time, and I think the return on the investment may not be what we're hoping for.
So you're not saying you're saying we should not send this? Or it's too long?
I'm saying I'd like to see, like, as I said, my preference, this is what we'd like from you, 3 bullet points or whatever it's going to be. Who can we talk to about this? Yes, I want shorter, more directive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody else hand up? Yes, Jennifer.
I think initially it's got to go through the school committees because they have regulatory authority over their district, especially a school committee like Lancaster, Bolton, and Stowe, which is, who do you say? You can't send it just to somebody in Lancaster. You've got to start at the school committee, especially if it's a regional school committee. You can go from there in years going forward, I think. Get contact information at each of the schools, but I think you've got to start with the regional school district, the school committee. That's my opinion. And the other thing is, I have a question, and I did not see your edits, so I'm not sure whether this is something. So under November Showcase Day, it says, given the dynamic nature of coordinating 2 schools, is that just supposed to be schools, parents? Because Lancaster only has 1 school. The district has 3, and...
Coordinating our school and the receiving school.
Okay, so it's not supposed to be 2 schools. Oh, okay, that's...
We're
see, 'cause
coordinating
before you're
ourselves with
talking
another
about
school.
multiple
That's how I read
events. That's how you read it.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
Pam. We can look at that to see, I hear what you're saying, yeah. Yes, Pam?
I just want to respond a little to Sue, that this isn't the be-all and end-all, right? So this is an opening. You know, we send it to the school chair, to the superintendent. I think that in the letter, we talk about we want to do the follow-up. And then part of this work is figuring out, you know, once this has been sent, for those that are willing to sign it, then who is it that we do the day-to-day work with within the school in order to do the follow-up? So this isn't sort of the end of the work, you know, once we send this, that there's a lot of follow-up communication that's embedded in this.
Yeah, so go ahead.
One more quick question. So, all right, I'm the school committee chair in Arlington. What motivation do I have to take this before the school committee, make an agenda item, and get it signed?
That Arlington has, what's the number of kids coming? Right, because Minuteman is an important part of the educational offering for Arlington, and that's what gives you the motivation.
Jim and then Jeff.
And plus, I would also assume the motivation is that Ed is going to be talking with the superintendent there and saying, this is something that you all need to focus on too.
I just have a question, Jeff. Pam, the signatures at the bottom of the second page, those are from the receiving town, not the sending town? People talk about signing it. Where, is that I thought that was a signature for Ed and me.
It would be signed by the, say, Lancaster, the Neshoba Regional School Committee.
But that's where you expect it, because it's not, I don't think it's clear that we're asking them to sign it, but we could fix that.
Well,
It's not clear to me anyway, maybe it's clear to everybody else.
This is proposed. They won't sign something that they don't agree with, right? That doesn't the letter say that this is our impression of best practices? This is what we propose and wish to talk about.
But people to my left are talking about them signing something, and I'm trying to find out what that
Well,
is.
it would, eventually, it would be a memorandum of understanding, which would be signed by the 2 school committees. On whoever the chairs are on the day it gets
That
signed.
they're going to draft one? I'm not clear on that piece, I'm not clear about.
So if you look at the last page,
Yeah.
page 22,
Yep.
there's, at the very bottom on the left, there's Minuteman School Committee Chair.
Right.
And then there's a place for Lexington, Acton, we'll fill that in, all the other school committee chairs to sign as well.
Well, I guess we'd have to put that in the cover letter saying, we'd like you to, if you agree to this, to sign it and send it back, right?
It won't be that easy.
I know. Jeff?
Well, as far as time goes, George is, and the admissions staff is fighting every single one of these issues in every single town, every single year.
Yeah.
And it's taking him an enormous amount of time to go over to the new personnel every year. The same issues come up whenever somebody changes or whatever, it's like all the time. So by having a standardized policy that they're not going to sign it, I don't think. I don't think we can get something signed. But to say that this is the standard policy that we're working to is going to make his job much easier, because you whip it out and you say that these are the things that we asked for, and you can go through it quicker. And eventually they're going to get used to him asking for the same things every year, and he can point at the towns that are doing it all. So we're creating a standard that various towns are going to have various, responses to it. But over in the long run, my guess is that they're all going to say this makes perfect sense, and in the long run, it's just going to become natural. They'll have the sheet of paper, and it's going to make our job easier every year. That's what I think is going to happen in the long run. And we've got to start the discussion now. It's going to take a lot of discussions with a lot of different people in different towns at different levels, depending on the town. You got to get started, and you got to put in writing, this is what we think is the appropriate way to do admissions for a Minuteman. You don't agree with me, you don't have to do the things you don't agree with, but we're going to have a discussion on it. And we're going to improve our understanding of each other every year, and eventually it's going to be nirvana.
Okay. Well, I could talk, Ed and I can work out some sort of, you and I can work out some cover letter on
We will.
whatever.
Final
Yes,
two
Alice.
comments before
I
we
know,
vote.
I'm ending it.
I just wanted to say this is actually a really interesting meeting because it's a very different position where this school committee is talking about interacting with other bodies, where it's a big change about, policy decisions affecting the new school, and it's all because the new school is opening. And it is all about the cover letter. So a very short cover letter sort of encapsulating what Jeff just said about our wanting to standardize this and make things easier for everybody to understand. So it's not just like a running, list of things that come out of nowhere. We're going to do this thing, and now we're going to do this other thing, and the other thing. It helps them to understand these are the things. Here they are, like that happen with Minuteman. I think that it's all about the cover letter, and it will work out fine.
Okay. Last comment or question? Oh, well, Ford, let you, because you hadn't said.
Just a quick one. I think that what I would think would be effective in Arlington is to ask the chair to get on the agenda of the school committee and go talk about this with the school committee. I think the direct interaction and getting it in public would be a wonderful way to get these ideas out there and do more than just sending the letter.
So asking Arlington's chair to put it on?
Yeah, we can customize it.
Each school committee chair, in Arlington, it would
That's not a
be,
problem at all.
okay, but being on the agenda to,
And I can
be
talk
there
to
in
Kathy
person would
about
be
it.
great. Yeah.
As it's
Okay.
going out.
Ford, you had your hand up.
I think all these communities are so different, and I think to ask school committees to sign it, are you going to ask the Sherburne School Committee, who's the chair of the school committee this year, to sign it? That doesn't make any sense to me because we're a regional district and Sherburne isn't even in this district. I think it should go to the superintendent, and I think I think the letter, personal letter, can come from the superintendent saying, this is what the school committee and Minuteman would like. In my community, the superintendent's been here. He's had lunch with Ed McQuillan. He's met the staff. He's offered the principal to come up and meet, anytime. He's offered guidance people to come up. I'm not sure we've really followed. Well, I know that's unfair. We have followed through. It just hasn't happened. So I think every community is different. We've done everything that Minuteman has asked. We only still have one student still, but I think. If you're asking me, it should be a cover letter of this document designed by the Minuteman School Committee to the superintendent, and then Ed can figure out with the superintendent the best way to follow up in each given town.
If you would, just sort of trust Ed and me to figure out what kind of a letter we write to each community, whatever, we'll do that.
If you need advice from any members of the school committee, what's best in their town,
Okay.
ask us.
I will, we will, right?
Yes, I was gonna say.
Absolutely the last comment, then we're going to move on.
I like getting the last comment. So there is kind of another benefit from this, which is related. The other benefit is, instead of having the Minuteman admissions process being something at the side is kind of the last thought you have, and oh my God, can I fit it into my plans? Didn't even remember about Minuteman. It becomes something that is on your agenda every year, and it also almost requires us to have more conversations with those bodies. That's a school committee to have more conversations with the bodies, like the other school committees and the other administrators and whatnot. So you say that, yeah, you have to talk to all these people in the different towns. I see that as a giant benefit to them start to feel more like we are part of their community school than they have in the past, which we are because we're their school too. So I'm hoping that as a side effect, that'll be will be more on their agenda, more on their mind, and we'll have more direct communications at whatever level is appropriate for that community, which, as you're right, they're going to have to feel out it's going to be different from town to town.
Well, you seem to be reinforcing my notion of personal contact and personalizing it. Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, moving on.
Do we vote on it?
There's no vote on it wasn't on the agenda.
Was a motion and a second?
There was a motion, a second, though. Yeah,
Still voted.
okay. Any more discussion? I hope not. All in favor?
What's the motion?
Yeah. To approve this with technical edits and cover letter.
All in favor? All opposed? None. Alice, would you see me at the end of the meeting, just so I can clarify a couple of your comments? A couple I can't quite read. Yeah, most I can, but a couple don't. Just a quickie. All right, going on to goal 5. Request for information about the RFI process and the RFP process. That probably involves Lexington, and I've heard that about that from Lexington, from my Community Preservation Committee meeting. Anyway.
So long, that's not long. The story is that Lexington, as we discussed last meeting, reduced their commitment to the full build. The sense of this body was that the full build was still a priority. In the meantime, we've exchanged letters between the town manager, myself, and then the recreation director has a letter, and all those are in your packet. We don't have to go through those. The RFI, if you recall, the UMass Donahue Institute is managing a request for information, which we requested potential partners who are interested in being on campus with us come to submit a proposal. We only had 2 proposals submitted, I think, but we had 8 different entities come to a follow-up meeting that was managed by the UMass Donahue Institute, and they met each other, asked me questions, and it was for us, it was very encouraging to see that, several swim clubs, a soccer club, Middlesex Community College was here, the UMass Lowell Graduate School of Engineering was here, a company that builds athletic facilities called The Edge. They've built a facility in Bedford, in Wellesley, in Essex, in Marlborough, I believe, was here as well. So we were encouraged by the fact that there are partners who are willing to be with us. The second RFP, the first RFP will go out next Wednesday or Thursday, and that RFP will be seeking proposals from developers in regards to our being able to complete the full build. Now, when I say the full build, just to remind you, that's the 3 synthetic courts, 3 synthetic fields, a stadia, field house, and tennis courts. We're also, and since all this is in public, there's really no need to go into executive session, I don't think.
It's in public in Lexington. At least.
The other thing I'll just tell the school committee briefly, and is that really where we're at is, if you think about it very simply, we have paused our negotiations with Lexington, and we are pursuing other means to complete the full build. And when you sugar that down a little bit, what we're really doing is looking for money. And there are several avenues that we're exploring that would result in the full build. And we can talk more about those as we gather more information about that. But we are still moving forward with the full build when it comes to the construction and the permitting and the planning and preparation. So I would expect in April, we'll have an executive session to discuss in some more detail what options the district may have at that point in time. And when are the RFPs due?
Right now, we've scheduled April 22nd.
April 22nd.
So that'll be after our meeting.
We may have a special meeting if we feel it's appropriate for the district to hear all the options and give us some direction.
Just to expand upon that, that is the due date, depending on the number of responses.
Right. If we get a lot of responses, it could be later.
UMass Donahue is expecting that they'll have their evaluation and background work done sometime in the first week of May.
So it fits in with the May meeting then?
May align with the May.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes, Alice.
I'd like to recommend that at another meeting, we revise the Goal 5 to say superintendent will develop a plan to fully build out the athletic facilities so that he can meet his goals.
I like the intent of that, yes. So that's all I have for an update, unless anyone has any other questions?
It's pretty much what I've been hearing in Lexington about, reporting back about how Lexington knows that Minuteman has pursued RFIs and RFPs, in other words, looking for other people. They hang for other to do to work with them. Hang up may not be quite the right word, but one of the points of so-called, well, I'll stay with contention. I'm not going to fish around for words. Was the length of the IMA from 25 years versus 50 years? That was one, and also a different sort of understanding or vision. I'm not sure what, maybe use that word too, of what Minuteman wanted to gain from the relationship and what Lexington wanted to gain from the relationship. That was meaning the cost of renting or leasing or renting fields and the amount of revenue from that. There's quite a difference between what Lexington, and this is what I'm hearing Lexington was thinking about and what Minuteman was thinking about. So it's, and Lexington knows that Minuteman, as I said, is looking for other partners for the complex. They're not quite sure if there's still a place for them and all of that. And I guess that remains to be seen too. Is there a place for Lexington and whatever comes next? That's basically what I'm hearing. Like, as I said, I've seen some things in writing. They come before the Community Preservation Committee on which I sit, and it's not executive session stuff, but those are the main points. But Lexington doesn't have nasty things to say about Minuteman. I don't think vice versa, but I think Minuteman, or Lexington was going to put it was going to be on the warrant for March and April, and it's now indefinitely postponed until there's a resolution about do we collaborate, do the two entities collaborate or not. So that's where it is. Any question about anything? All right, moving on. Jack, I have down no report from you, is that true?
That's correct.
Kevin?
Okay, Kevin, revolving funds, general funds, and then later on, we'll have a vote on the disposal of surplus property. On
2
page
minutes, we'll have that.
40. 2 minutes?
2 minutes, we'll have that vote. Not
Okay.
later on.
Thank you very much. Beginning on page 37, you'll see a two-page report that is our statement of revolving funds. I'd like to touch on that briefly, our cash balance position statement and a general fund expenditure report through January 31st. I'll note that the Finance Subcommittee went through these reports in detail at their last
Thoroughly
meeting.
vetted, right, thoroughly vetted.
So they've been reviewed. The only, some of the items of note on the revolving funds on page 38, you'll note the schools, the food service account, we're projecting a deficit, when you look at their fund balance, of about $4,705. I'll point out that when we look at, in the beginning balance, it was a deficit of about $34,007. So we picked up some ground there. We had personnel coverage last year that drove the deficit. In this year, we have a vacancy that we're trying to fill that we were able to pick up some ground on. But outside of that particular account, which we're managing monthly, all the rest of the accounts are projected in a positive fund balance. So in terms of page 39 is the the cash summary reconciliation. This is a report that we added at the beginning of this fiscal year. Simply to give a detail of the accounts and the account balances, and demonstrating that through the quarter ending December, books agree with the bank and the GL, and just a summary for information purposes. At your table tonight, we provided a 4-page summary. The summary pages are 2 sheets, letter size, and then the detail or in the legal size, 2 pages behind it. That gives where our projections are through January 31st. I'll put up my usual caution that we're only, at this point in time, from a cash flow point of view, just not even through halfway in the winter season, since the January expenditures reflect the December utilization bills. So we still have a ways to go. However, based upon some reasonable expectations that are noted in the column I, where there are any comments that try to explain any variances, both high or low, we're still projecting a surplus balance at the end of the year, about $341,000, which represents about a 1.6% turn back on this year's budget. Again, we have a long way to go. That's my report. In summary, I'd be happy to answer any questions. This does not require a vote.
Anybody? Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on, Kevin, to...
Yes, you'll find on page 40 a memo to request surplus property dated March 7th. Please don't ask me what any of this stuff is. I just know that we don't need it anymore. We'd like to sell it. So I'd be asking for a vote to authorize the disposal of the property.
So moved.
Did you get a couple of people, Julia?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Kevin, I'm so disappointed. I was going to ask you if we really could get away with not having an Altivar 66 controller.
we have it.
But I guess you can't answer it. But,
Well, we have asked people that could, and we can do away with it. But we'll be selling it, and I'm sure it'll be a popular item when we post it.
I'm sure you get a lot of money for the Altivar 66.
I'll be.
No, I already have 8 in my basement gathering dust.
Anything else? Okay, all in favor? I think everybody's still here? Yeah, except that, yeah, all opposed? 10-0, Julia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, school building committee update. Ford, we've heard about athletic.
Well, I'm really sorry Ed's not here, because he's going to do the move management, but maybe, Kevin, you can do the move management. So I will just give my report, which is we're on time and on budget. And
That's our mantra, your
I was
mantra.
in the building a couple of hours ago, and it's coming along great, you know, we got walls and paint and all kinds of stuff. So it's, we only have 3 months or 4 months to go, and that makes me nervous, but it doesn't make any of the team nervous.
Carrie?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a date yet for the gas line to come in?
We're gonna hear more about that tomorrow, but I suspect what we're gonna hear is that probably it will be a May date that'll happen. There is National Grid, we're in communication with them. The issue, last I heard, the issue was Concord, getting a permit for National
Concord,
Grid.
Massachusetts.
My faithful observer from the Finance Committee of Concord is there in December.
And that is I don't know what the concern is, we'll find out tomorrow, but that is.
The health department. On the kitchen part, too.
Yeah, but look, this is, National Grid. I gather,
Yeah, the
Concord has
connection.
not been great about giving the permit, and it's coming out of Concord, so we need it. I gather they have it, maybe Al Hoffman should be talked to, but I will know.
She's
tomorrow.
away.
I know Ed's working on her in the kitchen, but I'll find out tomorrow whether we should deal with Alice and give her a kick. And, you know how much power selectmen have, not a lot. But, that's the issue. They suppose we have a project manager from them on their team, and it's my understanding, what I was told offhand with the person I'm talking to, they have a subcontractor that'll do the work. So we're ready to go. So I'm sure we'll be all set.
Any questions from anybody? I just said one comment. I was thinking that maybe this is it. I confess I didn't go through all every word for word about what the movement management group is doing. But I'm wondering if people have thought about like a big party for all towns to come through and see the new school of some kind. Party may be the wrong word.
Why don't we talk about the move management, seeing it's on the agenda?
Oh, you're not quite there. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump the gun.
Yes, I just wanted to share with the committee some of the meeting notes and to give the committee a sense for what the process that's involved here. We've engaged STV as our consultant for the move management process, and we've been working with them weekly since prior to, during December, we've been actually meeting with them quite weekly, maybe even a little bit beforehand. And you'll see in the meeting notes on page 42, the number of staff that are involved in these meetings that are weekly every Thursday.
Yep.
And I just wanted to give you an idea of the schedule and the topics that you'll see running from page 42 to 51 to give you a sense of the discussions and the flow of the meeting and some of the considerations that we need to take this schedule to schedule this effort. So it's a very well-organized process, as you can imagine, and with all the stakeholders involved, including our own as project manager, trying to coordinate the moves, the deadlines, deliveries, and all of those, technology, all of those issues are discussed in detail at our weekly meeting. I'd also refer you to pages 53 to 59 with the move calendar. Actually, it continues to page 60. Where it gives a lot of the activities that have been going on. Jack's been spearheading a lot of the purging that's going on and a lot of the recycling activities in the school, coordinating with faculty, staff, and the maintenance department to try and keep that process moving. When we evacuate this building, it has to be empty. That's our obligation to the demolition contractor. So we've been scheduling time for staff to make that happen. I just want to mention a couple of milestone dates that you'll see on the calendar. But in terms of, where we are, the move management consultant will be working with the district to prepare the RFP to select the actual moving company. We expect that process is ongoing, and we expect award by early April. Some of the other milestone dates you'll see on April 22nd. Gilbane, under their contract, is responsible for most of the rigging of some of the heavy equipment. And to the extent we can identify equipment that can be shipped, we'll start to do that and schedule that moving forward. There are some shops, most notably automotive and advanced manufacturing, where you'd want the actual manufacturer to come in and rig and move and reset and bring back online some of that equipment. But some of the other things, say like in carpentry and some of those other shops, Gilbane will be handling that. We've also, through our skills grant, in some other funding, we have some additional new equipment that'll be purchased for the building. We'll start to accept deliveries after May 1st. On June 17th, right after the week after the students conclude their school year, we'll be working on our FF&E, moving some of the stuff that in the existing building. We're also starting July 8th. We expect our new furniture deliveries to start over that 3-week block period. On July 22nd, we'll be doing IT rollout, readiness and rollout. The 25th of July, we expect our certificate of occupancy. And then on the week of the 29th, we expect, we scheduled the administrative offices to move that week. So on the first week of April, once summer school ends, we'll be moving some of the items that we left behind to support the summer school activities. We'll be getting rid of any of the surplus equipment that exists that we haven't been able to get rid of during the year. We expect the move completion date to be August 23rd and ready for our new teacher orientation program. So as you can see, it's a very structured and organized activity. It's very, we have people that are very engaged, and we have to stay to the timeline because, as Ford mentioned, it's coming up very quickly. So I just wanted to report, I know a couple of times at the Finance Subcommittee, there's been some questions about the role of the move management consultant, at least when we're going through the warrant, and I felt as though that this, having these milestone dates will give you a sense for what the expectations are to occupying the new building.
And lastly, we do have a official ribbon cutting date set for August 4th.
Yeah.
October 4th.
October.
I told you that, right?
Yeah, it's in a,
And we're having an alumni night, May 8th, afternoon and evening. And we're selling bricks with little Minuteman tokens in them. So we'll keep you up to date on those dates.
Jennifer, was your hand up?
Has there been any more firm idea of how we're going to bring the students back? Are we going to do it all in one day?
Go ahead, Jack. Yes, there is a firm idea.
Yeah, the game plan right now is to do it like we run the school in formats with grades 9 and 11 and 10 and 12. You probably do the sophomores and seniors first on a half a day, and then wait for the next day to bring the other group back in. But we also have to orientate the staff, too.
And is that information going to go out before the end of the school year?
It will.
I mean, it's hard for kids. People don't pay attention in the summer. Okay, thank you.
No.
Also, I'll bring up again what I spoke about a little earlier. Are there plans to invite the general public, not just former students or their parents, but the general public, in other words, the taxpayers, to see town meeting people or somebody this is what your money has paid for and the school is open, I think it'd be great, it might be difficult to manage, but it'd be good PR.
We'll discuss an open house
Yeah, an open house
of some kind.
with, good publicity with an open house, bring the people in to see the facility. I think that would be wonderful, a great opportunity to do that. And we're going to carry Ford in on a Pelican so that, as the leader of the charge here. We're almost done. Relax, we're almost done. We're on Pelican, we're almost done. Okay, any other question about this? It's a huge undertaking. Kevin, is it my printer or I have some sort of
No,
shadow?
She puts in gray the things that we've taken care of on the agenda, so they're
All right,
intentionally.
okay, thank you. So I understand what that's about. Anything else, Kevin, or any other question for Kevin? All right. Secretary's report.
Okay. Unfortunately, I cannot pull up the minutes, but I was counting on. So, but let me go through them one by one. I have a few changes to the February 5th minutes. So under the good of the organization at the beginning, Joseph Scally's name was misspelled. Jack was misspelled, so we have fixed those. We have changed the statement of the chair of the finance committee in the minutes where she noted that the committee reviewed the budget at length and that they were very happy with it, and they are comfortable with it.
Thank you. Because I read that. I was going, what?
What did I say? I think comfortable would be a better description than very happy, no, and I said, meaning no offense to Kevin or something like that.
And then the last change, under item number 8, the assistant superintendent's report, the way it had been worded, it said that we didn't have a quorum, and it could have been misconstrued that we didn't have a quorum for the meeting, so we revised the sentence to say, Mr. Mahoney noted that due to the lack of the 66.67% weighted vote needed for a budget vote, the vote on the budget will be tabled.
Yeah, that's good.
So I move that the minutes of February 5th be approved with those changes.
Second. Anything else? All-
Abstentions? And I don't have a hard copy of the meeting with people who weren't there.
I have a card copy. No.
Because
Sue and Jennifer, how well we remember.
35.
You do,
35%.
my gosh. Okay, all in favor, all in favor.
But you as the second counter.
All opposed? Two abstentions, raise your hands. Okay.
And we also have minutes that were included for the February 14th meeting, and I haven't received any changes, so I move that we approve the February 14th minutes as presented.
And Jim, I think you're supposed to.
I was not there.
And was there somebody?
I was in,
Jennifer was not
Celebrating.
here.
I was in Tucson.
It's a lovely place to be.
Lancaster and
Even
Belmont.
better in a.
Okay, anything to add? Motion, did you move them? I don't remember. Was there a second? I guess so.
I second it.
Okay, Sue. All in favor? All opposed? Abstentions, Jennifer and Jim? Okay. Do I hear, we don't need executive session, correct? A motion to adjourn? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you all very much. Thank you for the work of all the subcommittees.